Have you ever had the feeling that your real life hasn't started yet? Not because you are unhappy, not because everything is falling apart, but because somewhere in the back of your mind there's a quiet agreement you've made with the future. You tell yourself, just a little longer, just one more project, one more promotion, one more difficult season, one more financial goal, one more responsibility to carry. And then finally life will begin. The strange thing is that most people don't realize they're living this way. Because the story sounds responsible, it sounds mature, it sounds noble. You are sacrificing today for tomorrow. You're being patient. You're doing what needs to be done. But there is a question that becomes harder to avoid as the years pass. What if tomorrow never arrives? Not in the dramatic sense, not because of tragedy, but because tomorrow keeps moving. Every time you get close to it, it quietly steps further away. And one day you wake up and realize you've spent decades preparing for a life you never actually lived. Many of us unconsciously believe there will be a moment where everything finally aligns. A moment when work becomes easier, when money is sufficient, when the children are older, when stress disappears, when the world becomes stable, when everyone understands your sacrifices, when you finally receive the permission to focus on yourself. But look carefully. Have you ever met someone who reached that moment? I haven't. Life doesn't work that way. Problems don't line up and patiently wait their turn. New responsibilities replace old ones. New worries replace old worries. New goals replace old goals. The finish line keeps moving. And because it keeps moving, people end up spending their entire life waiting. Waiting for the conditions of life to improve before they allow themselves to actually live. The dangerous part is that this waiting feels productive. It doesn't feel like procrastination. It feels like responsibility, which is exactly why it can continue for 20 or 30 years without being questioned. At some point, though, reality begins knocking at the door, usually quietly at first. You notice that years seem shorter, notice that recovery takes longer, you notice that energy doesn't magically return after one good night's sleep. You notice that stress leaves deeper marks than it used to. And perhaps for the first time, you become aware of something you spent most of your life ignoring. Time is not expanding, it's shrinking. When you are 25, 10 years feels like an ocean. At 45, 10 years feels like a paragraph. You begin to understand that life isn't an endless highway stretching beyond the horizon. It's a resource, a finite one. Every day spent is gone forever. And once you see this clearly, another uncomfortable realization appears. Nobody is coming to save you. Nobody is going to arrive and say, "You've suffered enough. You've worked hard enough. You've sacrificed enough. Now it's your turn." That conversation never happens. Not because people are cruel, not because society is evil, not because your family doesn't care. It doesn't happen because everyone is busy carrying their own life. Your employer is focused on business. Institutions are focused on maintaining themselves. The economy is focused on growth. Even people who love you are focused on their own struggles, fears, and needs. That's simply reality. Your inner life is not someone else's project. Your freedom is not someone else's responsibility. Your happiness is not sitting at the top of anyone else's priority list. And strange as it sounds, this realization can be incredibly liberating. Because if nobody is coming to save you, then you can stop waiting. You can stop standing at the train station for a train that never scheduled to arrive. For many people, especially men, there is another trap hidden beneath all of this. We learn very early that our value comes from usefulness. If you provide, you are valuable. If you endure, you are strong. If you sacrifice, you are admirable. If you never complain, you are respected. Over time, usefulness becomes identity. You stop asking who you are. You only ask what you can do for others. And eventually, you become so busy being useful that you disappear. People begin depending on your reliability, your productivity, your patience, your strength, your ability to carry more than everyone else. The problem is that when this becomes your role, very few people notice the cost. They see the machine. They don't see the person operating it. Then one day you get tired. Not lazy, not weak, just exhausted. You want a pause. You want space. You want something that belongs to you. And suddenly people become confused because they were accustomed to the version of you that always said yes, the version that never needed anything, the version that kept functioning no matter what. This is often when resentment begins. Not because people are using you. People use what is available. The deeper question is, why did you believe usefulness would eventually earn you the right to live your own life? Who made that promise? Where was that contract signed? The truth is uncomfortable. Freedom is not awarded as a prize for good behavior. Nobody hands it to you. You take responsibility for creating it yourself. And that doesn't require blowing up your entire life. This is where many people make a mistake. They hear messages like this and imagine dramatic transformations. Quitting their job, moving across the world, burning everything down. But meaningful change rarely starts with revolution. It starts with reclaiming territory, small territory, an hour, 30 minutes, a walk, a notebook, a camera, a guitar, a workshop, a motorcycle ride, a trail through the woods, a hobby you abandoned 20 years ago. Something that exists for no reason other than the fact that it makes you feel alive. Something that reminds you there is a person underneath all the roles you've been performing. And the world may not understand this. In fact, it often won't. When you've spent years serving a function, people become attached to that function. The moment you invest time in yourself, some people will view it as selfish. Some will question it. Some will mock it. Some will feel threatened by it. Not because you've done something wrong, but because your availability has changed. You are becoming less convenient. And convenience is often mistaken for virtue. Yet this process matters. Because a vacation won't solve the problem. A weekend won't solve the problem. A temporary escape won't solve the problem. You cannot recover a lost sense of self with 2 weeks off every summer. What people often need isn't more entertainment. It's authorship. The feeling that they are creating rather than merely consuming. The feeling that they are building rather than merely enduring. The feeling that some part of their life genuinely belongs to them. Creation has a unique power. It doesn't matter whether you are writing stories, restoring old cars, making videos, taking photographs, playing music, woodworking, gardening, painting, or learning something completely new. The activity itself is almost secondary. What matters is that while doing it, you are no longer just a function. You are a person again. And that changes something profound inside you. Little by little, those small acts begin pulling scattered pieces of yourself back together. You remember old interests, old dreams, old curiosities, old parts of your personality that were buried beneath years of obligation. No dramatic breakthrough, just gradual reconstruction, like rebuilding a house, one brick at a time. And perhaps that's what real freedom looks like. Not escape, not fantasy, not abandoning responsibility, but refusing to sacrifice your entire existence to responsibility. Learning to say no when necessary. Learning to protect your time. Learning to choose yourself occasionally, without feeling guilty. Learning that self-respect sometimes look very ordinary. A walk, an hour alone, a personal project, a boundary, a simple sentence. No, not this time. These things seem small, but they are often the first signs that a person has stopped waiting for permission. Because ultimately, the most powerful part of this realization isn't that nobody is coming to save you. It's what comes next. If nobody is coming to save you, then you are free to stop waiting, free to stop postponing, free to stop negotiating with an imaginary future, free to stop treating your life like a rough draft. The door you've been waiting for someone else to open may have never been locked. It may simply have been heavy, uncomfortable, uncertain, and frightening. But it was always there. The choice was always there. Not a perfect choice, not a risk-free choice, just a real one. So maybe the question isn't whether somebody will rescue. Maybe the question is this: what part of yourself have you been postponing? What dream keeps getting pushed into next year? What interest keeps getting sacrificed to productivity? What small piece of life have you convinced yourself you'll reclaim later? And if later never arrives, what will you wish you had started today? Because one day all of us reach a moment when we realize something simple and deniable. The life we were waiting for is not coming. This is it. This has always been it. And strangely enough, that realization may be the beginning of the freedom we've been searching for all along. That's all for today. Thanks for watching. See you next time. And until then, stay free and unique on your journey to your personal true north.